All right, I'm going to give a lecture right now on hatching and texture and material. So I've already talked about hatching, which is a way to abstractly fill up a space to give it value on a page when you just have a pen. So the first thing, again, we have hatching. And again, that is for abstract filling in value of an object or surface or form. So that is just like this, using lines to fill in the space with value. And with this little swatch that I've done here, right, I have gone from dark to light. The other thing we can do is material, right? And that is figuring out a way to represent what something is made of and give that texture to it on the page. So what materials, there are many materials out there, but some of them to think about are glass, stone, wood, metal, fabric, rubber, and at this point, etc., because we won't just focus just on any one material. And so, as an example of quickly filling in a very small swatch, right, this is some texture for wood, right? So I have the wood grain here. We could also do a texture for what I have, stone. Let's do some stone right here. So maybe this is a concrete. So these are all the pits in the concrete. The texture that it has. And I'll show you some examples that I have previously done with some materials here. But the next one I want to show you about the big ways to categorize doing texture and material indication. So there's hatching, which is abstract, material, which is what something is made of. And now we have pattern. And that is more like decoration or graphics, right? So imagine having a gift in front of you and you wrap it with paper. Then that paper is going, and if that paper has a pattern of some kind on it, it's just going to wrap around that object. And most of the time, patterns, what can we do for a pattern? I can just do, say it could be a stripe pattern. Right, so here with the pattern, I'm using a combination of hatching to give me this pattern. And in a moment, I will talk about how pattern and material differ, but I want to real quickly go to the last thing here, which is visual for texture and material in sketching on a page. And that is for things like weathering, such as clouds, smoke, fire, lightning, And those don't represent as well in these little boxes, but they are really important. So if we have smoke, and I'm actually going to break out of the box for the smoke. Little specks in there, little shadows as we see this. And this is important. Say you're doing some designs for a barbecue and you want to show that that barbecue has some stuff grilling on it. It would be good to know how to do smoke. So taking a step back, right, with the material, if I apply that to this box that I have here, and my light is coming, say, from, actually we'll have coming from this, nope, not that direction, this direction. The reason I chose it coming from this direction, because this one is smaller, so that when I have my side be really dark over here, I have to fill in less space to make it dark. Right, so again, this is some sort of concrete or wood. Sorry, not wood, concrete. It's concrete. Concrete stone. Right. So on this side, I'm making it quite dark. And on this side, again, I will still do some texture, some to it to rough it up, but not as much. Ideally, to give me a 1, 2, 3 read on this. And now I'll also go in here and change this edge to match the pattern, sorry, the texture here of this material, because this texture is something that's in 3D in dimension, right? So just roughed up that edge just a little bit, and I can even maybe go in here and add a little white to the top of this still. Even some white over here as like light hits little specks on this thing. And now I have like a 1, 2, and 3 read on this sort of stone box. This also works if I have something that is round. So let's give myself a cylinder here. Right, and the light's going in this direction, and I have a core shadow right around here. And the same thing, at the core is going to be darkest. So for this stone, I'm varying between sketching little pits. Pits are like little divots, little dents in the stone as it gets hit by hard objects and causes it to sort of scuff up, but doesn't really break it. So that's what this concrete is. Right, so I'm just doing a gradient out, trying to give myself a very dark core shadow. And here's this crack in the concrete right there. So it's a combination of these little hatching strokes, trying to follow the form, trying to keep it dark there as it wraps around. Right, as a texture wraps around a form, it will sort of start to compress, because I draw from the top here, right? If this is a straight line right here, and I also have a straight line over here, but we're looking at it from this angle, right? The length of this line is longer than the length of this line looking at it from this angle. So that's why as we draw textures, as they wrap around forms, they start to compress. So you can see that happening here, and I'll try and do another one that shows that a lot better, which is if I had some sort of texture, and let me do another round thing here. Can we still see that? Am I still on the page? Yes. I'm gonna draw a larger one here. Right. If I have a texture, right, made up of like these circles, so maybe this is like a plastic that has like this pattern on it, right? So if my light still is going in this direction with a core shadow right about here, right here. I make up my core shadow with smaller little circles here, so that even when you look in the dark spots, in the darker areas of this object, you start to see some of that texture come through. And I will start to just draw them just a little bit larger, a little more spaced apart to give that gradient, which is why it's important to be able to go from dark to light and figure out how to represent them that way. So I have now this gradient, and also as I wrap around my surface this way, my circles will be circles if I look at them straight on right here, but as I go around, they will start to compress into very thin ellipses. And same thing in this direction, because of how I see them, they will start to compress into thin ellipses. So for here, you can see me starting to go from circles to these very thin ellipses here. And now also, right, I start off with a cylinder that I just did a straight line, but now I want to go and give these little bumps here, because I'm seeing, right, that this is the material, and this material has this little rough surface to it, which is that these are not just circles, they are, again, these like sort of bumps on the surface, which is why I go and add that to this surface. So there's a lot going on here, right? Using the texture itself as value, I change this texture as it being circles. I change it from when I'm looking at straight on, they are circles, and as they wrap around the form, they start to compress. And lastly, also it's trying to spread them apart so that we get a lighter value over here and we get this core shadow on this. And another thing I can still do with this is I can even start to add some white here where light is hitting it directly, and I'm trying to do that in the same pattern of this texture, of this material indication that I'm doing. And you'll notice that I haven't covered the entire thing with texture, because that would take a long time. So by putting my texture mostly in my shadow areas and gradation from there, I'm saving myself the time of having to put the texture over this entire object. So these three right here are material indication, right? I have stone, concrete right here in a cube, stone, concrete right here in a cylinder. And what I'm saying, I think, is some sort of like plasticky texture that has this little like bubble dimpleness to it. The nice thing about doing all these over here, materials, patterns, and visuals, is eventually you'll learn that different things you do can be used for representing multiple types of materials and textures. And sometimes we're not sure what they are. So it helps to just say, hey, yes, I've drawn this to make it look like stone as much as possible, but I'll even just put a note, right? Stone or concrete. And now there's no question that that is some stone or concrete. So someone will visually see it and say, oh yes, stone and concrete. And then they will also just be able to read it and confirm that that's what it is. So next thing I want to really talk about is about the decorations and graphics. So the material here is what the thing is actually made of, and I end up roughing up the edge of my surfaces. Oh, I should rub off this stone cylinder a little bit. While the material here, it's embedded in like the surfacing of it. A decoration or a graphic is more just like having a package, right? A gift that we wrap with a bow. And if I have this stripe pattern here, it doesn't change, right? And maybe the gift is wrapped this way, so this one continues there and continues there and continues there, and we have this over here. So I do have to get this in perspective, and I have this right here. And there's a couple things, right, we can do with this package, but this package is not going to have the same edge texture right here because it's just this box that's been wrapped in paper. I can still, if I want to try and get a 1, 2, 3 read, I can try and make this side darker because it would be. Right, so I'm just filling all of these in. And filling all of these in. Patience. Also, this is where it becomes really important to have been sketching from your elbow and your shoulder, because it allows you to do these things quite rapidly. This is a lot of patience. All right, so I have the stripe on that side of the darker one. And I'm still gonna make my stripes over here dark, but just gonna space it out just a little bit more. So if we start to get like a 1, 2, 3 read, but again, I am going to leave the edge here as this slick, smooth edge because it's just wrapped around it. One more thing, right? So we have decorations or graphics. So if it's something like a cylinder and the graphic is, say, polka dots, and let's do just a quick little swatch right here of polka dots, quite easy. It will wrap around this surface, so any polka dot straight on would be pretty circular, but as I start to go around this surface here, right, they will start to compress and be thinner. So I can do the same thing over here. But now on this top surface, we're looking at it in perspective. Right, again, looking at straight on, we have a circle as it starts to wrap around the surface, curve around the surface. They become these ellipses that become thinner and thinner until they're almost just lines. And now, still with this one, I can even take these polka dots, and if my light is coming from this direction, use the combination of the polka dots and hatching to indicate the light by just making some of them darker than others. So I'll keep these that, make these really dark, and then gradate out again and again, some gradation. And now I can gradation here, now really dark and gradate out. Right, so we have this polka dot thing there. And that is, again, hatching, abstract, material, glass, stone, wood, metal, what the object is made of, like stone, concrete, wood, plastics, patterns, decorations, graphics that go over surfaces. Then we have some visual things like smoke and clouds and fire. So just an example of some smoke. And practicing to do that so that when it comes time that you actually need them for something, you're more confident about it than having to figure out in that moment. It's like learning to use the bandsaw or the table saw in the shop. You don't wait until you actually need to use them for the first time. You practice and do some cheap little things and cut them up just to try it out before you need to do your final project, right? And so the spoken little specks in there, there might be some smoke. Now, you see me doing these little swatches, and I'm going to move this aside over here, right? And here are some example of swatches, right? And what's really important here is going from dark to light, right? So different ways to do that. In here, these lines are just closer together, and I slowly spread them apart. In here, again, closer together, they get longer and longer. In here, you can see the pattern that's happening over here, but again, it starts out really small. I did this, and I think I can do it differently, so I tried it again over here. You don't, like, if you don't figure it out the first time, try again. And this one here, which I actually really don't like. I'm not really sure what material it is, but I tried it, didn't work. This is always kind of a fun one. These are these sort of like loose squares, circle things I'm doing. This thing, well, I'll show you something just like this right now. Or again, even this could be like the pattern for a scrub brush or a rug. And so with these in mind, right, to practice your hatching, you want to do, to practice your hatching, your textures and your materials, you want to make these boxes. And then, again, the easy one, this one right here, I'm just going to move my hand around. So when I say I'm just going to move my hand around, I'm doing like these figure eights all over the place. So it's also about finding a pattern to move your hand in so that that pattern comes across at some level in the material or texture that you're doing. And I want to go back and do that pattern just a little smaller, right? So it's the movement that my hand makes to give me that texture. And my goal again was being from dark to light. And now I'm going to do one that is going to take quite a bit longer because they don't all happen fast. So this next one, I'm going to rotate my page so maybe it's easy for me. And it's going to be all like these little like circles. And it means at first that's a lot of work as they're really close together, so I can get like this dark value on the page. But so at first it takes a lot of time. And then it really depends upon what you're doing. You might end up doing a texture, a material, a pattern that takes a very long time. I'm talking 10 minutes to fill this whole thing in because of the patience you need to do with it. Or you might find one that you can do in 1 minute. Like this wasn't that long. Maybe it was like 1 or 2 minutes at most. Right, so trying to feel this out so I can create this gradient slowly, doing these larger and larger circles here. Right. Right, and actually as I get to the larger ones, I do, while that is a bit faster, I do have to slow down a bit just to make sure that they look good. All right. So there's that. And so again, some samples of what some of those look like. Some more samples of some textures in this video and over textures and material. So there's hatching, which is abstract representation. We've done that before. Materials, what an object is made of. Pattern, so decorations or graphics, they'll go on top of it. And visual, different things like weather and smoke that don't necessarily fit in boxes or materials are made of, but are good for doing backgrounds and things like that. All right.